Tell me, what do you see now that's different than when you started back then?
Only 30% of our work really represents true IT, but a third of our work now is on science, tech, and engineering, a space where both DoD as well as civilian agencies spend, a ton of money.
So let's go back to the beginning, right? Before you start your business, how did you learn about federal government contracting?
We didn't start as a federal government contractor. We started out as a software company developing what was at the time called lead generation software for banks and credit unions.
How much of your work now is government versus commercial or non-government, let's say?
Roughly 90% of our work is on the government.
Any notable projects that essentially that you can remember that took your company where you like say, hey, we were here, we were small fish, and now we're like stepping up into the next level?
Yep. So our first really large contract, we won a contract with NIST, National Institutes of Science and Technology, and we bid the deal. It was a $75 million deal. We won it, and that really took us to another level and opened more doors for us. The sky's the limit because I've seen what's possible, and I see what's possible when you pull together the right resources and you invest back in the company. You can do phenomenal things.
All right, if you go ahead and just introduce yourself, name and the name of your company.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Kenneth Kelly. I'm the president and founder of Strativia. Strativia, we're a professional services company servicing primarily the federal government.
Okay. And I see that you start Strativia quite some time now, back in 2006.
Yep. So we just celebrated 18 years in business. Come a mighty long way, but we're still having a whole lot of fun and we got a number of goals we still have to hit, but we've had a heck of a run so far.
Wow. Wow. No, that's great. Tell me, what do you see now that's different than when you started back then? Like, what are some of the differences that you're seeing out here?
Well, it's a lot of competitors out there. There were a lot of competitors back then, but certainly more today. But I think some of the competitors that started, earlier on are no longer around. I think some of them have struggled to, find a way to remain relevant. And for Strativia, actually, I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Oh, no,
But
go
yeah,
ahead.
I
No,
think
go ahead. And listen, hey, look, I like you could keep going. I mean, we've got time. So, yeah, even if you want to answer how you guys staying relevant, that'd be great.
Yep. So we've remained relevant by, looking at additional verticals that we could become a part of. I think you had a chance to visit one of my previous talks back at the Black Wealth Summit, and one of the things that I highlighted and capitalized on was the fact that everyone wants to be a part of, glamorous services businesses. So whether or not that's an IT company or cybersecurity or whatever that may be, they want to be a part of the buzzwords, the glamorous things. And Strativia certainly no exception. In the beginning, we were more or less a software company. We developed software. We provided help desk support, all of the things that typical IT companies do. However, we were fortunate enough, or earlier on, we were exhibiting at the AFCEA West Conference, which we've been exhibiting at for more than 10 years now. However, on one of our first forays out there, we were exhibiting and we were, marketing products, marketing software services to the Navy and DoD as a whole. And a gentleman came by our booth from Deloitte, and Deloitte was looking for a small business to support them down in Gulfport, Mississippi, loading Navy ships, basically logistics work. And so I looked at the guy from Deloitte. I'm like, well, what are you doing talking about logistics and loading Navy ships? I mean, you guys are Deloitte. You guys are top tier management consultants. You figure out how to change the world. Like, what are you guys doing logistics work? And what he shared with me is that at Deloitte, as with other large companies, they provide the services that the federal government buys. So yes, the federal government buys management consulting, IT, and all of those things. However, a lot of their bread and butter business happens to be low tech, including logistics support and so forth. And so we left that conference really with a light bulb on, and when we got back to the DC Maryland area, we got a chance to research Deloitte's website. the research, CACI, BAE, Booz Allen, et cetera. And we saw that while those companies were known for core high tier services and things like engineering and cybersecurity or management consulting, whatever the case may be. But as you begin to really peel back the onion, they did a lot of low tech work because the government spends billions of dollars in those industries. And so we worked hard from that time frame on forward to begin to expand our services outside of just the IT space. And as a result, today, only 30% of our work really represents true IT, whether or not that's, application development or help desk support or, running, some sort of SOC, whatever the case may be. But a third of our work now is on science, tech, and engineering, a space where both DoD as well as civilian agencies spend, a ton of money. And finally, a third of our work is in the services space, whether or not that be logistics support, base operations, airfield management, just services as a whole that keeps various government sites and government bases running. So in terms of our ability to remain relevant, it really boils down to understanding where the government spends money. We study the SBA small business NAICS code document where they list all of the NAICS codes and when you go to do the research, it has size standards, but you can go pull them FPDS and things of that nature to find out how much money the government is spending in all of those different things. And while a lot of IT companies, I'll shut up in just a second. But while a lot of IT companies will focus on 541, 541, 511, or 541, 512, which are more or less IT, there are several hundred other NAICS codes on there that the government spending money on. And so if you're focusing on just two or three, you're really keeping yourself inside of a bubble, if you will, when there's so many different types of services the government procures. So that's how we've remained relevant, really understanding where the government spends money and focus time, effort, resources on how we gain those skill sets to be able to provide those services to the government.
That's a great answer. That was an amazing answer, man. No, I love it. I know the question people are going to ask, right? And we're going to go back to your story. But clearly, right, when you're starting off, right, I've seen people that are brand new to the federal government and they put all these NAICS codes on their capability statement and they've never done anything like that. Is that, I mean, I know you're not saying do that, but I've seen that in the past, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's appropriate because you want to do work in those spaces and those areas, and perhaps you haven't done it yet. But what happens is sometimes when the government's doing market research, and if in fact you don't have that NAICS code listed, you perhaps will get a notification of that potential opportunity. And of course, the best way to enter a market, if in fact you don't have the past performance yourself, is to team up with another firm that does. So sometimes it's appropriate and necessary to list those NICS codes, even if you haven't done it, only because you may not receive an opportunity or a notification about an opportunity without it. And yeah, so that's why folks do it a lot. But again, it can work for you for the most part, if in fact, you're trying to be found.
Okay, I like that. I like that answer. So let's go back to the beginning, right? Before you start your business, how did you learn about federal government contracting?
We didn't start out as a federal government contractor. We started out as a software company developing what was at the time called lead generation software for banks and credit unions. Back during that time, early 2000s, banks would have links from their websites to various third-party websites. For example, if you're ABC Middle Bank or a community bank, ABC Community Bank, and you wanted to provide financial guidance tools to your retail banking clients, you would put a link at the bottom of your website to go to Yahoo Finance or Bankrate or Investopedia, and all of those had tools: rent versus buy, how much car can I afford, how much home can I afford, and all these different types of calculators. But what those banks weren't aware of at the time, because this was certainly the beginning of the internet space. What they weren't aware of is when they sent their retail banking clients to those different websites, when someone clicked on a rent versus buy tool or how much home can I afford, at the end of that calculator, they're plugging in data that will be used by those banks' competitors to cross market products and services. And so from their perspective, you're looking at how much home can I afford, then they're going to send that data to a number of mortgage lenders and say, this individual is looking for a mortgage, and they would cross market. So our e-financial portals provided financial guidance tools to banks and credit unions that was branded and styled after that bank's website. And as a result, they didn't have to send their retail banking clients to those third-party websites. At that time, there was roughly 8,500 banks in the U.S. and 8,000 credit unions. So we had a target market of roughly 16,500 we can target. At the height of 2008, or toward the end of excuse me, at the height of 2007, going into 2008, we had roughly 40 banks and 20 or so credit unions on board, and we were growing. However, in 2008, as you might recall, was the credit bust. So banks were closing, they were consolidating. Mortgage companies were, generally closing down. It was just a really bad time, and banks weren't buying new products, new services. And so as a company, we really, due to, market shift, we got knocked in our butt, and we really had to pivot as a company. If we wanted to stay in business, we certainly couldn't continue to sell e-financial portals to banks and credit unions, because the bank industry, they were hemorrhaging, they were losing, they were closing. So we shifted and did what we did, got into software development for small commercial companies, state and local government, et cetera. But that's how, we started out. We started as a software company, and because of market conditions, we had to shift to begin to do what is known as custom software development, custom website development, et cetera, for commercial, and then eventually state and local, and then we expanded to the federal government. So we shifted, due to market conditions.
Interesting. You were doing custom website development.
Yep, yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Do you not find it fascinating that people are still buying custom website development today?
Well, I think, for the smaller companies who want to do, templates and various types of AI templated types of websites, they're appropriate for small companies. But, as you grow and you have a larger company, you certainly still need custom, because, just the templated stuff that's out there today, it's not going to work. In many cases, you have, back end integrations with systems, tools, et cetera. So there's still very much a need for custom, and then the larger the organization, the larger the integrations with backend systems, and not just backend systems from the standpoint of managing customer portals, but also backend systems for managing personnel and tools and resources. So I don't think the custom's going anywhere. I think certainly, the templates, the AI can play a part in the low tier front-facing websites, but certainly not the big stuff. And when you're dealing with, sites like, even our website today, we have a couple hundred plus pages on there, of different types of content, as well as different types of tools, videos, et cetera. And you can't build that kind of a platform typically with templates and or AI. AI is really, I think, going to play a part in some of the smaller iterations.
Right. Yeah. No, I would agree. I wasn't sure if you thought back then at some point, right, in your head when you're doing that, like, hey, 20 years from now, right, we will still be doing custom websites.
Yeah, it very much is still alive, and still, there are firms out there that solely still do that. I think, it's a super competitive landscape, and it's one of those businesses that can be done overseas just as easy as it can be done here. In fact, when I started the company and we were developing e-financial portals, a lot of our development took place over in Belarus and Eastern Europe. Even a couple of our testers were over in Ukraine, and I had deep experience working with developers and so forth in Eastern Europe. The company I was working for at the time, Microsystems, which was a hospitality, is still in business, but they got acquired by Oracle, maybe 10 years or so ago. But did a lot. They did quite a bit of their software development in Eastern Europe, and Belarus in particular. And so when I left the company, again, I was a director of implementations for intercontinental hotels on the West Coast and Canada, as a matter of fact. And in addition to having, installers who put the systems in hotels and resorts that were on site, I also work with our Belarusian teams for customizations for certain customers, interfaces, things of that nature. And so when I left, I still had great relationships in some of our development teams, and I tapped them. And these weren't development teams that were dedicated to microsystems. They were, third-party development companies that had a contract with microsystems to do specific work, but they work with other companies as well. And then later on, when we would get into, software development space, we would always be able to tap, both U.S. and external offshore slash overseas resources.
Right. Wow. Wow. No, that's fascinating. I always wonder because I'm not, even though I'm an engineer by degree, I've never done software development. I don't understand software development, especially not on the government side. So I always wonder how people got into that space. So this is a great little backstory to help understand. Did you actually understand the development side?
Yeah, yeah. So in the earlier days, I worked for a couple tech companies. Before Micros, I worked for Visual One Systems and then National Gas Systems before that. Um, while not a developer, we were much more technical. We ran queries and tool sets to change and move data around, but I wasn't an actual developer, but I was a technical analyst, if you will, and performed a number of tactical services, utilizing everything from SQL Server to MS-DOS to FoxPro to other tools. But that was mostly database work, and again, moving data around, but not actually developing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do they still use SQL?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So a lot of the server, functions have been outsourced to companies like Rackspace or
Right.
GoDaddy or One and One, whoever services you're using these days. But a number of organizations still have internal or premise-based servers, and they still utilize all of those things. It's just when and I think even if you outsource your hosting and server needs to a third party like a Rackspace or whatever that hosting company may be, or that dedicated server management company may be. They're utilizing it on the tech side on the back end. But we have a lot of widgets that we put in front of the application. There are a lot of widgets and front facing tools that we put in front of the back end tools is actually running things. But yeah, SQL Server, among other types of servers, very much active.
Okay. All right. How much of your work now is government versus commercial or non-government, let's say?
Yeah, yep. So I would say roughly 90% of our work is on the government side, and of government, maybe 80% of that's federal, only 10% state and local. It's like when we did a lot of state and local back in the earlier days, but when we became immersed in the federal government, it is an animal in and of itself. And obviously, if you're able to master appropriately, you can make a lot more money, I think. State and local have very minimal budgets, and sometimes because of the fact that state and local allows certain types of international companies to bid to work, companies in India and places like that, you dilute your U.S. service offering, while the federal government has a Buy America Act. So a lot of the international firms and so forth can't go after the work the way that they can in state and local.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Um, so when you start out in business, right, and you start doing software development, you left the company and you said, okay, are you always an entrepreneur? Or was it, I mean, were you said, hey, were you tired of your job and you want it different? Did you say, I can do it better than my boss? Like, what was that thought process, if you can remember?
Yeah, yeah. when I left, I was at Microsystems and I just finished up my MBA, and I was at an organization where the CEO at that time, he passed away, but it was a guy named Tom Giannopoulos. He was the CEO. He really didn't interface or interact with anyone outside of his C-suite. And I remember I was putting in a ton of hours getting the job done. If you're dealing with a hotel group like Intercontinental Hotels, at that time, I believe it was like close to 4,000 hotels needed to be, cut over to new systems, et cetera. I had 40 plus hotels I was putting new systems in a month, and I had a huge team. But at that time, Tom Giannopoulos didn't even speak to me. I mean, I might get to work early, 7 o'clock, 7:30. I would say, "Good morning, Mr. Giannopoulos," and he would just look right past me. And so I said, do I want to stay at a place like this where you know, I'm too small to be recognized by, senior leadership, but I go out there and do my own thing. And so, I decided to take a leap and, here we are today. It was the best leap, obviously, years 1, 2 can be pretty lean and tough, but, beyond that, it's been great. I've been able to see and do so many things that I would not have been able to do had I not started the company.
Yeah, right. So you think that if he had acknowledged you probably would have stayed there?
I think, money's important, but also appreciation. And we just hired our first COO recently. He starts in a couple weeks, but one of the things he said to me was, money's great, but it's even greater to be, recognized and appreciated. And so when he shared that, I remember how I felt at Microsystems, and one of the, preemptors for me leaving was I didn't feel that appreciation.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Uh, what is one thing that when you start in business that was hard that is still hard today?
Well, it's a lot of things that are hard, but one thing I was just having a conversation about. We were nominated for a Tech Company of the Year, and I just had an interview a few days ago. A judge panel came to my office, and one of the questions asked was what was difficult then, what was difficult now, and one of the things that was most difficult was understanding that we weren't always the best,
Mm.
and that resonated, you know, loudly then, and it resonates now. I mean, sometimes, although as entrepreneurs, business owners, we like to think that we're the best thing since sliced bread, and there's no one that can do better than us. But the reality is, there are a lot of great firms out there, and sometimes they do things better than you. And so, and that was a reality then. That's a reality now. Of course, in the earlier days when we was just starting out in the federal space, there's a ton of great federal government contractors in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, or the DMV as we call it. And so as a company, we sought out opportunities in smaller markets. So we began to pursue work down in Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, and even places like New Mexico. And we were more or less a big fish in a small pond. And while it was more competitive and we weren't the best in the DMV because there's so many firms that do great work in those markets, we did very well. And then as we won more work in those middle markets and those smaller markets, funny thing happened. We started winning more work back home in the DMV because we had a ton of past performance down there. And then we have all these geographically dispersed locations to say, hey, these guys are big. These guys are doing work in all these different places. So it worked for us. We went to a smaller market where we weren't as good, sharpened our skill sets. And then we came back to the DMV in terms of targeting more work here. We were, in fact, on par with a lot of companies. Not the overall best, but somewhere, the top middle echelon, we were good. But that's always tough, and is recognizing that you're not always the best. There's all it's like they say, as, for women, they say there's always someone prettier, always someone nicer, always someone have the better this that. Same with companies. There's always another company that's better. There's always a company that's doing things a little more faster. There's a little more leading edge. So you just have to continue to try to get in where you fit in and go from there.
I like that. How much do you think that your formal education, I know you've got a couple degrees, you've got an MBA, has helped you versus self-education?
Yeah, I think, the degrees are great when you're going to work in corporate America and you're trying to differentiate yourself from other candidates pursuing a job. But if you're working for yourself, the degrees are not as important. Um, and in terms of yeah, there's certain things you can apply from an MBA or even a business degree that are applicable to your business. But a lot of things are so industry specific that they're not going to teach you in school. So I would say you can probably extrapolate using the 80-20 rule. 20% of what you'll learn in school, you can apply to your business directly. The other 80%, not necessarily. And then, just being in a specific industry, you're going to learn your industry by being in your industry.
Mm. When you were a kid, did you ever do anything entrepreneurial like sell baseball cards or candy or anything like that?
Oh, no, yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, I cut grass in the summer and I shovel snow during the winters and certain weekends when I didn't want to do either. I went to the grocery store and I helped folks with bags. I was a hard worker, and I was independent entrepreneur. I can, on a good summer day, I can clear 300-400 bucks. Just cutting, yards at $40 a pop, $50 a pop, sometimes more. Plenty of energy, so I can get it done. But again, the shoveling snow was tough, but it was money to be made, and I always did it. And unlike now, I just when I see, when the snow comes or when you look at who's cutting lawns these days, it's not the kids, it's you
Right,
know these groups, these Hispanic guys,
right.
whoever else. These are all businesses now, and the young kids aren't really doing it anymore. They're doing whatever. Usually they're gaming or in the house on their phones or whatever. But we were very much entrepreneurial back then. I was super entrepreneurial because I enjoyed having my own money. My parents didn't have extra money to just give me, so I went out and got my own.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Washington D.C.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. So
yeah,
you grew up in DC.
Northeast. Yeah,
All right.
and yeah.
Was any of your family members, did they, either any of them work for the federal government or the government at all?
Yeah, I got a brother who works for the federal government,
Okay.
and uh, yeah, yeah, and I have some other family members who work for the federal government.
But I guess I meant more on parents. I'm sorry. Let me be clear. Any your parents, were they involved? No?
No, no, no. My dad was an auto body painter, painted cars, and my mom was a nurse, I guess a nurse aide, if you will.
Yeah.
So she worked in the hospital.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, my mom was a nurse aide as well. And my dad actually was a truck driver. But all right. So now you come over to the government side. You're taking somewhat of a beating, right? After dealing with the banks. How did you start financing some of those early projects?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was very tough for new business to get financing from banks. So, had to leverage, savings, 401(k), things of that nature. But then there's also a program, at least in Maryland, it was the uh, FSC, Prince George's County Financial Services Corporation, which was a government-sponsored financial institution, and it more or less provided um, leverage and an incentive to traditional banks to lend to minority and small businesses. And if in fact the business would default, the government would, would pay the difference. So sort of like the SBA's guarantee loans, but lots of states and counties have these sort of guarantee loans to sponsor, small businesses. And of course, my company was in the incubator when we started out, so there were a number of state provided resources that we utilized. But I got my first $100,000 line of credit through FSC. And once you do well with that particular program, you build credit, and then you can go and get a traditional a line of credit. But yeah, very tough. But I would say tell anyone, look into your state and local, like you have your state economic development level, and then you have your county economic development departments. And then within those, they'll show you and tell you about special funding for small businesses.
Um, and so you moved on from that. You got a traditional line, and is that where you're at today?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we are, depending on the need for a year for that year, we tend to be around the $5 to $10 million line of credit range,
Hmm.
and the goal, is not to use it because you
Right.
want to, not, butcher your margins with lines of credit. Typically, you're going to pay 5 to 7% easy on a line of credit, but if your profit for a given month should have been 12% and you give away 5% or 6% on the line, that's, it hurts, So you want to get to a point where you have it but not need it.
Right. Right. I find out that's when they give it to you the most, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When you don't need it, then they like, yeah, you want to take this $10 million
Yeah,
project?
yeah.
That's fun. Any notable projects that essentially that you can remember that took your company where you like say, hey, we were here, we're small fish, and now we're like stepping up into the next level.
Yep, yep. So our first really, really large contract, we won a contract with NIST, National Institutes of Science and Technology. There was a science and tech deal on the table, and we had some key science and tech people who are consultants for us who can help us win the deal. They even help us write the proposals. They became partners of ours, and we bid the deal. It was a $75 million deal, and it was our largest at the time, and we won it, and that really took us to another level and opened more doors for us. Yeah,
Uh, like that. Were you or any of the socioeconomic programs?
yeah, yeah,
Veteran,
absolutely.
Hub Zone, were you any of those programs?
Yeah, yep. So we certainly did the 8A program and the federal side, and then the MBE, DBE, and state and local side. Those are business development programs, very helpful because it allows you to compete against companies that are similarly situated as opposed to the big guys. So, the goal is when you get into those programs, make sure, you don't go spending all the money as you make and put the money back into the company. Hire leadership that has experience in winning non-restrictive work or full and open work. Get your certifications, corporate certifications, get your quality certifications. But as a whole, you really utilize that program as a business development program to help your organization grow. It wasn't designed for you to just take money out of the company and splurge and do well for yourself. If you're building a company that you want to be around, then you have to invest back in it. Whether that again, that's leadership, there's certifications and all of those things, contract vehicles, everything that's going to help you thrive once you're out of that program.
You said hire leadership that has experience in winning work that's outside of the category. That's interesting thought.
Yeah, yeah. So you gotta, like, if you're in the 8A program or the Hub Zone or any of those types of programs, as you're winning work inside those small business programs, you can have people who are adept at winning small business set aside work, but understand that there's like a finite period of time where you're going to be in that program.
Right.
So whether or not it's the beginning or the middle, but never at the end, you bring on people who are adept and experienced at winning full and open work, because at some point in time you're going to be out of that small business category. And so to the extent possible, you want to begin to win work in a non in a non-segregated environment or a full and open environment, a non-set-aside environment, so that your business will be in business for the long haul. A lot of companies are, in the 8A program and other disadvantaged programs, and that window starts when you get the certification, and then it ends at a certain period of time. So if you spend all your time only going after small business set-aside work, once that window closes, you become you're so somewhat doomed because you waited too long to begin to diversify. You diversify when the getting's good, when you're upward trending. But when you're downward trending, it's very difficult to hire, say, a new COO, a new director who has experience sets in non set aside work.
How did you learn how to price hiring people? Like, how did that come about?
How to learn how to price or
So, for
price
example,
them.
like when you're hiring people, how do you know what do they like? Do you pay them
Oh,
150,000 to like, how do you know
sure,
the
sure.
value, right? When you're negotiating
Sure.
salaries.
Sure. So there are a number of tools out there that are available. Salary.com being one of them will tell you what the median is for specific titles in a specific area. But also, for certain key positions, while we did have internal recruiters for certain positions that we were hiring for, we use executive recruiters who also knew what the market bared for certain types of positions. And so we've leveraged executive recruiters for that very reason, but we also utilize tools like salary.com and other salary tools that tell you what the median is for, and that's based upon real data. They look at who was hired at what, and it'll give you a low, medium, high, and even a median in general of what someone should make for a specific position based upon a certain number of years of experience.
So then when you sit down with the people and you tell them that, I mean, is there a lot of back and forth or what does that look like?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you should never be far outside of the ballpark.
Okay.
You should have a number that is within range. You make an offer, and of course, everyone a standard a standard operating procedure, a standard protocol is for your candidate, to counter whatever you offer, and you meet somewhere in the middle. But it shouldn't be, off by more than 10 or 15%. Usually, no more than 10%. It should be on because you are utilizing tools to come up with price realism and salary realism. Nothing should be, you should not pull anything out of the air. You should be able to look at tools and research what specific titles are being paid in specific areas based upon, a certain number of years of experience.
Okay. And then I know that you said it was competitive. So what are you doing to keep those great people around?
Well, aside from paying a market rate and being generous with your bonuses, like if the company is succeeding and doing well, there should be some level of profit sharing from the standpoint of giving back bonuses, things of that nature. But then it goes back to what I talked about earlier, appreciating your people, showing a certain level of appreciation, but also, investing in them. We do have, tuition and training reimbursement. So as folks are, you know, building themselves up, we want to make sure that we provide resources, financial resources to help them build themselves. So it's not just about, leveraging their technical talent to get the job done. It's also about, understanding where they're trying to go in the future. And, to the extent possible, we do promote within.
Like, I like it. I like it. I like it. So what's something that you found easier now that you've than when you started? We talked about what's hard, but still, but what's easier?
Yeah, a lot of things are easier now. I have a much larger team now, so a lot of things I don't have to do, I can delegate. But so that part's become easier because I'm not involved in everything. In fact, a lot of things I'm not aware of until, it's brought up in a meeting or what have you. So I'm not wearing all the hats anymore.
Oh,
As you grow, you don't have to wear so many hats. You can focus more tactically and strategically where you're trying to go, and then pull in the right team members to get it done. So that's definitely easier, from the standpoint of where focusing on where you're trying to go and not being super diluted because you're not wearing all those hats anymore.
yeah, yeah. Did you have any? I know we talked about teaming. You're saying, hey, if you're not in this marketplace, maybe teaming is a good option. You mentioned the large contract that you won. Um, I know one of the strategies that people often mention is joint ventures, mentor proteges. Did you do any of that kind of stuff along your journey?
We have done some mentor proteges. We're at a mentor protege right now with Honeywell and Floor, where we're being mentored. We do have it on our strategic plan to mentor some younger companies, particularly work that we'll size out of. We're going to put them in front of it.
Nice, nice. What else? You said in the beginning before we started that, hey, look, we're doing well, you're having fun, but you've got some other goals you want to hit. Anything that you could share publicly or just
Yep, yep.
abstractly, you know?
Yep. So we're roughly 40 million a year in annual revenue at present. We are approaching 400 employees. The goal, especially with COO and some of the other leaders that we just hired, is to help us cross over the $100 million mark per annum, as well as cross over initially 500 employees, but ultimately 1,000 employees. Once we cross over 100 million in revenue, 1,000 employees or somewhere around there, the goal is to see where we are, whether or not we want to try to go public. I don't have any intention of selling right now. I'm just having too much fun. But the goal long term, within the next 5 years, hit cross over 100 million, and certainly see if we're positioned to go public.
I love it. I love it. Did you think that you would be saying that when you started the business back in the original
Yeah,
days?
absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely. Never knew we would be this big. We were happy to get to $1 million in revenue. That was an aspirational goal in the beginning. But once we hit a million, it was easy to hit two, then three. But now, the sky's the limit because I've seen what's possible. And I see what's possible when you pull together the right resources and you invest back in the company. You can do phenomenal things.
What do you for small businesses getting started out there? I know again, like I said, I've seen you teaching some of these workshops on how to do business with the government. When you talk to small businesses out there, what are some of the things that you're sharing with them?
uh, you know, Everything I share with you, diversification, go on to locations that where you may be able to win, as opposed to staying in locations where you're not always the best. Uh, uh, Talk to them about partnering up with larger firms at the very beginning. All the basic stuff that may seem basic, but it's actually real. You really there's a pathway, there's a process. In the beginning, you do have to partner up so that you gain past performance. And once you do that, you got to find work that's winnable.
Oh, have you gone through any other, now that as you've gone through your career in business, any type of leadership trainings, entrepreneurship trainings, books, other educational resources that you've had to help you along with this process? Things that you
Sure,
could want to
sure.
recommend?
Yeah, there's one on government contracting from 0 to 1 billion. I'd recommend. It's on government contracting. Um, of course, there's a number of trainings. I know I did the Tuck School of Business, growing your minority business to scale. That was certainly helpful. But I think at the end of the day, if you're in government contracting or small business as a whole, leverage all the resources the SBA has to offer. They're dealing with real training around real practical things that businesses deal with. There's nothing hypothetical about what they do. And then some of the law firms, the local, or even some of the accounting firms, they all offer different types of trainings that's going to be relevant to real businesses. I would steer away from just general education. Of course, I'm in government contracting, so I'm familiar with the law firms, the accounting firms, and things of nature that work with Govcon. And so those are the ones where I follow their blogs or their pages for trainings and all that stuff. And a lot of stuff is free. They just want you to come and be a part. And if you grow and you're able to use their services one day, cool. If not, you still got the training. You still got a chance to network.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, whenever I see any rule changes, I reach out to the law firm. I'm like, hey, come on my show. Let's talk about this rule change because they know, right? I mean, I see it, but I don't know how to explain it, right? So they can articulate way better than I can. Especially now between accounting firms and law firms. But then even now with CMMC, I have to bring on those guys that do that kind of work to talk about NIST and CMMC. So, yeah.
Okay.
I like it. Um, any daily habits, routines, walks, exercise, ice bath, yoga, meditation. I look, I know you say you're having fun, but I can't imagine it's all every day is an easy day. So Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, not every day. We had some tough days last few days, but we got through it. I mean, you're gonna have a problem here and there. I mean, a problem, is basically well, stress. So my business stress, daily stress, usually deals with, you know, business related problems. And stress is an indication that you don't have a solution to a problem. And once you come up with a solution to a problem, whether or not you execute that solution or not, you can just plan what you're going to do. That alleviates stress. And so I learned that a long time ago, and so I really don't have a lot of business stress, because whenever a problem comes up, how will we remedy this problem? And immediately stress goes away and we go into action about what we're going to do. But in terms of daily routines, I still enjoy reading emails early in the morning, and I still work with a black notepad where I write out my actions for today, like what must get done today, and what could get done today, but it's not super important. Maybe I push that off. So that's my start to emails, as well as writing out my plan for the day. And it's really gratifying to begin to check things off the list as you get things done. And I still operate from that ethos, but I wake up, every day, some level of exercise, whether or not it's lifting weights or a light walk, slow jog, whatever the case may be. Got to get some exercise in, got to get the lungs opened up. And then, what I find is when you get to the office, you're just way more energetic, and you get so much more done. You feel more nimble, more alert, more ready to take on the world, so to speak.
yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. It's my time to think and clear my mind. Like you said, I'm ready to take on the world. But I like that when you said stress, an indication that you don't have a solution to the problem. So I like that. I'll take that with me. Any favorite quotes,
Uh,
sayings? It could be from
yeah,
family, it could be from your mom, it could be, doesn't have to be necessarily
yeah.
business related. Something that you say around the office that you're known for.
Yeah, so thou should decree a thing and it shall be established. I've lived by that. It's a biblical quote that, you speak what you want into existence. And I'm a big, firm believer of speaking things into existence. Some people call it affirming, whatever the case may be. But a lot of the growth, a lot of things we've done is because we've spoken into existence and we believe that it can happen. And, along the way, we got it together because we had to. We didn't have a choice. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to burn your excuses and burn your backup plan and make that first plan work. And I live by that.
Yeah. Um, Robert Greene says, put yourself in death ground.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah.
There
No,
you go.
I, it's, I know it works, but it's hard to do for a lot of people, right? Like, it works. Like I tell everybody, I said, look, if your back was against the wall, you would make this work, but you stay in your comfort. So you give yourself options. I like that.
Absolutely.
Um, Interesting. Um, Tell me, a recent purchase from Amazon.
Sheesh. I know I upped up on some colognes that I liked.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So I buy a lot from Amazon, to be honest with you. But yeah, I do colognes from Amazon because I like to price shop. I don't want to pay the top price for stuff. Just because you have it don't mean you got to spend it.
See? No, see, whenever I ask that question, I learned something about a person. So you
Yeah.
see, we would have never had that come up otherwise, right? So
Yep.
I mean, I like the price shop. I like it. An odd place or job that you worked at that no one may ever guess.
Sheesh. A long time ago, I worked in Jiffy Lube when I was like um, 22, 23. I didn't stay there very long, but I worked at Jiffy Lube. Uh, and then after that, I worked at hotel housekeeping, what they call a houseman, carrying the linen up and down the stairs to the housekeepers, helping guests with their bags, that kind of thing. Very much service oriented before I got into the tech space.
Wow. Okay. That's good. I mean, I like that. Again, that humanizes you, right? Right now we picture you like Elon Musk, but I say, okay, all right. So come back
Uh,
down. I like that. All right. If you weren't doing this, what do you think you'd be doing?
it's a good question. I love the hospitality space. I may still be in the hospitality space, putting, systems in hotels, resorts, that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, how do you think that someone, I mean, I guess you probably gave us the answers to this. Um, I will let you, the question is, how can someone create your level of success? But I think you've already given us a lot of that, right, going in. If you were to start over again, what would you do differently? How's that? Let's rephrase the question.
I would probably do some of the same things. I have to start sooner.
Okay.
I started around 30, and 18 plus in business, coming up on 50. I would like to have started sooner, uh, maybe 25, and really see some of the success I'm seeing now, 10 years ago, because,
Mm,
I would have had more time to enjoy it.
okay. I like that. I like that. All right. No, go ahead and if you want to, we're coming up on our time. You want to leave some parting words for small businesses out there listening to this?
Yes. One parting word is make sure when you're about to do a podcast, you bring your charger with you so that you're not about to run out of battery space like I am. But the main thing I would say is just always be prepared. You can never be over prepared, but just always be prepared. You have a meeting, bring a pen, bring a notepad. You go into a class for training, take a laptop. Just be willing to be ready. Always be ready. Because you're gonna see a myriad of opportunities, but you just got to be ready for them. And most people aren't ready, and so you got to be ready.
Dan, thank you. I appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely. No, well, this is phenomenal. I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to to the next time.
Yeah, same here. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.